What's up, guys? Messenger of the Cross, Pulse Point Media, targeted individual. Every day, 24/7, without interruption. I wish it wasn't this way. I dream about the way life was before these perps entered my life. But then again, when I look back, my targeting started from such a young age that I had no chance to even really realize what was going on and that I was being nominated as the scapegoat and the sacrifice within my family system, and socially, all those connections were not natural and normal, but that they were arranged. And when you start realizing how scripted and controlled and how different you are from these NPCs, and it's like they don't have a soul. That's what I would liken it to. They don't have a soul. They don't have a mind, will, and emotion, or any ability to have their own volition to think for themselves. And they have become so dumbed down, or whatever the process has been of torture and abuse, to get these people to be people who are hijacked, people who have other forces and powers working within them, other than the goodness, other than the light, other than God himself. And it is getting darker and darker, and more lawlessness is taking place, as we all know and we all see, especially with the Joint Intermediate Force Capabilities Office, as I showed Colonel Wendell Limbach before, and I just have the screen up right now, just to remind you that the word force is in the title of this, and it is this office, this department that this colonel works for and is the director of and heads up, and is really acting as the salesman, and the intermediate go-between for these private military contractors that develop this technology of these silent weapon systems and platforms, and tries to find new uses and new purposes for the novel weapon systems that he wants in place to be able to deal with threats immediately in live time. And that means a continual presence. That means dudes in regular clothes policing the United States. That means a police state that's enforced under emergency rule, under crisis management. And when they say intermediate force capabilities, they mean that they need the tools and the equipment and the tactics to be able to function in plain sight without being detected, without being revealed. They want to conceal their presence and use intermediate force in a competition game over the resources, over where you live, over where you work, over where you play, over your relationships. And that's what their warfare is all about. It's about taking the common and normal everyday things and weaponizing them and using them to hurt you, using them to break you, using them to suffocate you, using them to bury you under layers of broken. That's what they want. They want layers of broken that you are underneath being suffocated by. And that is why they collapse and control all the resources, and nothing is natural in the United States. This is a war, and they are engaging the average citizen and just profile policing and labeling people as terrorists or extremists or domestic threats. And once you get that label, and once they single you out, you'll understand what I'm saying. When you're an innocent person and there's been no due process and you haven't been able to answer your accusers, and you've got people just slandering you viciously every neighborhood you move into, you know what I mean? And there's always a coordinator, a handler, someone that moves in that is, moving in parallel to you. And you move in, they move in. You know what I mean? And then the games begin. Joint intermediate force capabilities, meaning having some tools that are less than lethal, but still able to manage and control your behavior. And that means neural remote monitoring. That means, using all these systems that are, broadcast systems that are scalar waves and silent weapon systems that they can use and set up shop in your neighborhood and broadcast at your house. You know what I mean? And it is a multitude of different platforms and different capabilities that they have been given. That's why they're called the capabilities office, and this intermediate force is something under armed conflict, but still engaging. The military's there to engage in conflict. And so they have to make you the bad guy. They have to make you the enemy. That's what psychopaths and narcissistic psychos do. They only think in terms of black and white. They only think, I win, you lose. And somebody always has to lose. And, for many of us, we realize that that doesn't have to be the case. We don't have to lose nothing. And we don't have to be sorry for nothing just because we don't want to be tortured, just because we don't want to be singled out and isolated and dominated by this kind of abuse and intimidation that, has been authorized to be done by the Joint Intermediate Force Capabilities Office, which is the Marines in regular clothes policing the United States under the control of the threat fusion centers under the terror laws. And they are able to operate and function in plain sight and use intermediate force on whoever they label and describe as a threat. And there are threat assessments that are done time and again when you move into a neighborhood, and everything's documented, your social security number, when you move into a place, everything in this system is accessible, digitized, and remotely accessed. And furthermore, they are remotely accessing you and your brain, your nervous system, your inner dialogue. And they know it, and they let you know it. They let you know that they know, that you know that they know. That's what they do. And they do it again and again and again because it's supposed to get you upset. It's supposed to make you lash out and step out of character. They want to push you and push you and push you to get you to walk off the cliff yourself. And they'll lead you right up to the edge. They'll lead you right up to the edge. All these tactics like gaslighting and property damage and directed speech and less than lethal non-touch torture, all these tactics that they use, following you, coming and going at the same time as you, sabotaging property and relationships, like all these tactics are what are used by the Joint Intermediate Force Capabilities Office to have an active presence and to control the way they want things to go. And they just set up shop in the United States, and they have interests, they have plans, they have, business deals that they're working on. They have an agenda. And if you find yourself on the wrong side of that agenda, or you find yourself, one day, just like the light switch goes on, and next thing you know, people are coming and going with you and mimicking and mirroring your every move. Just remember, I told you so. And this new war is hidden in the term competition. It is a competition in a new battle space, they call it. And that battle space is when you go to the grocery store, when you go and you want to drive your car, when you go to the park, when you go on a walk, okay? And you're going to be watched, surveilled, controlled, and dominated and tortured. And this torture is what they use with electromagnetic weapons to burn you, to electrocute you in your home, to electrocute your organs, to burn your skin all the time for pain compliance. See, they have used pain and torture and made it legal, and under NDAA have made it legal. Look it up. And they just label you. And when they label you, then they suspend your rights and they torture you. And with the hope that you will submit, and with the hope that the torture will lead to, you no longer speaking out, or you just counting the cost and being like, this is way too heavy for me, I'm going to shut up. Okay. But what I've found is that even when I don't speak out, they still torture me. You know what I mean? Whether I speak or not, it's irrelevant. to the agenda and plan that they have of never stopping. And only somebody with an authority backing them would be able to grandstand and brag and boast. And then when you try to report it to the authorities take the side of those that are perping you. Even when you have video evidence, even when you have proof, even when you have, so much documentation that just reveals this horrible crime happening to you. And you end up getting a wellness check because how dare you, actually talk about what we're really participating in and doing in this darkness. But we're here to bring the light. We're here to shine the light. And intermediate means some type of force that is used but hidden in plain sight so that it can go on and on and on undetected. You see? And when people complain about it, they can just say you're crazy and mentally ill because all the tactics of engagement are crafted. All the tactics of engagement have been modeled and crafted after what you would call in psychology, covert, malignant, narcissistic abusers, like the triangulation, the slander, the smear campaigns, the damage to property, the sacrifice of your things to get a bad reaction. That's what they live for. That's what narcissists live for. That's what psychopaths come alive with, is at your harm, at your expense, and to the offering up of everything you love and are attached to feed on the pain of your downfall. And they are determined to do that. They are determined to do that. So I just wanted to say that this intermediate force is a force. And one of the tactics that they use in warfare is sexual abuse. And I think a lot of targeted individuals can testify to, the use of energy weapons and frequencies and a broadcast system to, invert reality. They will send images, and will torture you with the exact opposite of what you are and what you like and what your preferences are. And you have an identity that's intact and you know yourself. So when thoughts and images start bombarding you, or, song lyrics you can't get out of your mind. And it's just all day, all day, all day, all night, where that one line is repeating in your mind again and again and again to break you. And you start realizing that they're engaging you. That's what you start realizing. And you start recognizing that these are not your own thoughts. And these thoughts are synthetic. And these impulses are not natural. They are synthetic. They are not coming from you, but you are being stimulated. You are being attacked. You are being subdued under an EMF broadcast, and they are engaging your thought life. I used to have dreams, where I was asleep and they would attack me in my dreams, and they would try to grab onto me and hold me. And, I'd be on some military base in my dream and they'd be, torturing me and holding me there. And, and I'd wake up, or, just completely wake up, or they like to disturb me or jerk my body before I go to sleep. Like right as I fall asleep, I'll have some muscle contraction that like jerks my body and wakes me up really, suddenly, just like, so they do these kind of things. But one of the main things that is used in warfare is rape and is sexual abuse, or SA. And it is used to dominate and break you. And they can use electromagnetic energy weapons to invert reality and to behavior change you. Basically, they can modify your behavior through torture and through different pleasure and torture. Like what they do is they take you up, take you down, take you up, take you down. And they take you into pleasure, then they take you down into pain. And it's this dynamic of, surprising you, ambushing you, bringing about this strong reaction that they have cultivated in the environment to try to bring about. And it is vampirism. It is feeding off your life force and energy. And they have cast a role for you. They have cast a role for you. And you're the bad guy. Okay. It doesn't matter if you haven't done anything wrong. Okay. That's not the point. None of us have. Most of us, we grew up, we had normal problems, normal issues that, most kids have and go through in America. You know what I'm saying? And, we realized looking back that this presence has been in our lives for a lot longer than we recognized it, than we were aware of it. So I just made this video, The Emergency That Never Ends. how rights fade under protection, because it's all sold as an inversion. It's all war is peace, freedom is terror. If you're straight, they try to make you gay. In other words, everything is inverted. And if you're gay, they try to make you straight. It doesn't matter what your flavor is or what you like or what you don't like. You are experiencing customized abuse to invert you, to, bring about another personality in you. And, this is a literal thing because they can broadcast brainwaves of other people onto the target. And you get tortured by people that are synced up to you and mimicking and mirroring you, and you're sharing in the same brainwave patterns, and you're knowing what other people are thinking around you, and they can come to you 24/7 and then just declare it to you over and over and over with a smirk on their face as they use the directed speech to let you know you're under surveillance. So this is technology that's being used. And, I can't tell you how many targeted individuals talk about being sexually assaulted in their dreams, being sexually assaulted, just walking around the house, being sexually stimulated, having images, having different types of, desires or wants that aren't normal or natural to the person, that are out of character, out of place. And these things start presenting themselves, and they try to exhaust the person and wear them out by it. So the broadcasting of images and the to the visual cortex, and the harassment of these images and impulses that are paired together to modify your behavior and to get you confused about yourself and to disconnect and disassociate you from being present in yourself, because you're thinking to yourself, like, why am I having these desires and why am I having all these feelings there? And then you recognize these aren't mine. This is not something coming from me. Okay. And that's usually what targeted individuals who end up waking up even deeper after a period of time recognize, after battling all of this, and how often in warfare they use rape and sexual abuse to dominate and humiliate and break the will of whatever, whoever is the victim is being broken by this, is being dominated by this. And I wanted to share a couple of videos with you guys, but I wanted to also read a couple things. So please bear with me, and thanks for subscribing. Thanks for coming in. You guys, I just appreciate every single one of you. Like, I know people say that, but I truly do. And I thank you for the comments. I thank you for, the discussion we can have about this. I really enjoy everybody's comments. And thank you for subscribing, and thank you for sharing the channel, guys, because, this is our mission to get the word out and to help other people that are being targeted. We're not here to make money. We're not here to sell books. We're not here to, we're not here to, pick a trend, that is part of the algorithm, and, talk and do videos that are according to that trend. Like, we're not here to promote ourselves. I'm here to help others, and I'm here to be open to try to offer my services, offer my insight, my wisdom that I've learned over the years through this targeting and my experience with it. And I really think that God has given me the ability to talk about it, and has released me really, and given me the utterance, given me the words, the language. I want you guys to know that this isn't coming from me. This breakdown, this discernment that God has really given me through this experience of having all family and friends desert me. And pretty much it seems when you look back that all they could do was set me up for failure, and do it deliberately and intentionally to get a breakdown so that they could maintain the control over me. They didn't want to let me be independent or support my autonomy. They never did that. You know what I mean? It was always about subjecting me to other abusers and third parties that were always, coerced into attacking me and harming me and hurting me. And there was this person in my family playing both sides of the fence and, loving me, kissing me, hugging me, telling me I'm her angel, but at the same time, playing the victim of me to my brothers, to my dad, and to everyone else in my family. But this spawned a whole life of being subject to covert and malignant narcissistic abuse my whole life. And then just finding myself repeating the type of dynamic that I was in when I was young before I healed. And until I healed in Jesus' name, I was I was just still in the cycle and under the programming of what I had experienced growing up. In other words, all the craziness was normal to me until I recognized that it wasn't natural or normal. And I stopped blaming myself and I started having self-esteem and self-confidence in my abilities to discern and understand. And, abusers always will bring that into question. You don't see this clearly. You're just not spiritual enough to understand that this abuse is actually love. Don't you know that I love you? And that's why I'm abusing you and harming you and hurting you, because I love you. Don't you get that? Like, this is the inversion that I'm talking about. Okay, so let's take a look at this. This is targeted individuals, the various means of attack, abuse, and assault. And this is just a diagram that a targeted individual diagram, that shows all the different types of systems and the different branches. It's just to illustrate that we're under frequency broadcast systems that are controlling and modifying and engaging people that are innocent, that aren't armed. Remember, Colonel Wendell Limbach says under the level of armed conflict, but that still means there's a conflict and a reason for their presence. You see what I'm saying? And when they just invented the terror laws, that gives them the open-ended means to prosecute a war endlessly because nobody can figure out who the terrorists are. It's this shadowy enemy that could be anybody and anything. You see what I'm saying? And we as people were ignorant and let them set that up over us, you see? And that's why the Patriot Act and all these emergency wartime powers are being demonstrated, because there's an emergency and it gives them the excuse to be the savior and the hero. And this is what they do to manage the collapse and the crisis that they also create, because it is the Hegelian dialectic as they drive us into their arms. Learn what the Hegelian dialectic is. Learn what abusers do. Problem, reaction, solution. They always create the problem. These abusers, psychopaths that have multiple personalities, and can switch at the drop of a dime, you know what I mean? Into a totally different person. You know the type I'm talking about. The psychopaths that have no empathy or remorse or ability to connect the dots and are blind. But targeted individuals, the various means of attack and abuse and assault, and this is what I'm talking about today, is the sexual assaults that happen to many of us. And it is rape. It is abuse. When they rape your nervous system, when they rape and engage your mind by a synthetic means that is not natural, that is not normal, and they try to stimulate you sexually or broadcast signals that invert the identity of who you are. This is a wartime tactic, and energy weapons are being used to carry out sexual degradation and humiliation, really rituals that are done. And I'm going to show you some stuff that's going to blow your mind, but let's read this. This article. It has been said that when you're first targeted, they hit you hard in multiple directions. Well, yeah. I mean, from every direction, not just some. Presumably, this is done so you'll collapse, of course, after experiencing reoccurrent emotional violence. And that's perfectly put. That is what we go through, the hostile environments that are not natural, that these people are engaged in directly against us. And that is a competition, vicious competition over our standing, over our property, over our being able to travel. And there is this interest in shutting everything down and doing it deliberately. And we're experiencing reoccurrent emotional violence, many of us, which is compounded after you've realized that all normal support structures and avenues of grievance have been removed. How true is that? I remember the day that I discovered that. Oh man, did it rock my world. I was like, what do you mean I can't tell family or friends or people that have loved me about this? And I would just get laughed at, mocked, and told that I was mentally ill, as they knew and participated in the abuse, just insulting my intelligence by their grandiose arrogance. You know what I mean? Where they think that I don't see, There appears to be multiple levels of intensity of this program that people can receive, of course. The two main parts of the program are group stocking and non-lethal weapons. Remember, this is what Colonel Wendell Limbach talks about, non-lethal weapons, which are lethal. Okay, don't let the term confuse you. They are lethal. They can kill you in your house, like they tried to do to me when they electrocuted my lung and hoped that I would die. So both are violent attacks, and some are apparently hit hard with both. Yeah. People tend to associate the word harassment with acts of temporary aggravation or pestering. Therefore, it may not be the proper word to describe the never-ending acts of covert violence inflicted upon targeted people. Yeah. I mean, you couldn't have put it better, which amounts to torture and then murder. Because like we always say, and many of you know this, but it's death by 1,000 cuts. So they can get away with hurting you and make it less obvious. And some of the tactics used in this program are borderline subliminal, yes, directed speech, using items and objects and placing those items and objects to speak to you again and again and again, defying the laws of probability at their repetition and frequency of those messages being communicated to you. You know what's up. So it says right here, it is my goal to make the unconscious conscious. Many of these tactics are a type of mind control. Yeah, most of these tactics have been used in former COINTELPRO operations by the United States, Russia, and Germany against their civilian population. Yeah. I mean, the struggle sessions that were done in Germany were like, mobs of people, hive mind, abusing individuals for not going along with the system. And they would publicly, maybe beat somebody down as a mob or whatever to let you know that, unless you're part of the hive mind, you're going to be severely abused and punished. And they create this inclusivity, and it's a cult. And they tell everybody, you're going to be a god. You're going to have all these superpowers and be able to run society. And that's what they tell them. And they put the worst of the worst over us. It's not about race. It's not about identity politics. It has nothing to do with what they get us all arguing about. There is a medical tyranny over all of us, a medical dictatorship over all of us worldwide. And they will use the medical system to basically eliminate and get rid of you. And we're finding that many nurses and many doctors are just leaving and quitting the medical industry because of the, legalized euthanasia that's basically going on underneath our noses. Okay. And remember, during the time of that crisis, that health crisis, guys, you know what I'm talking about, C-19, they had enough time to make up, TikTok dances, and they were all coordinated and organized to do that. But I'm not going to go on a tangent. But just how did they have the time if they were so overwhelmed, right? Meanwhile, if I went down the street to my local hospital, it was completely dead. Okay. And I did it every day. Okay. But the hidden evil genesis is obviously derived from known tactics such as bogus investigations. Been there, done that, surveillance, done that, smear campaigns, done that. The use of noise. Yep. Theft. Yep. Break-ins. Yep. And removing items in your house and then placing them back in the very spot that you looked a week later to make you complain about it, make you look crazy. They want you to talk about it. They want you to tell your neighbors, your friends, your family, so that you can be alienated from them, because they'll just approach and say, you see how mentally ill he is? Break-ins. Moving your couch around is a tactic of psychological warfare. Getting in your house when it's locked is a tactic of surveillance, dominance, and psychological warfare. They want to let you know we're in control of you. Character assassination, been there. Staged accidents, been there. 11 times in 1 year in Colorado. Hit in my car 11 times in 1 year. I'd walk into a store and walk out and my car would be hit, again and again and again in a repeated fashion. I lived at the car shops. Okay. I lived there. Just put it that way. I fix, you break. I fix, you break. Merry-go-round dance for years. I fix, you break. I fix, you break. I fix, you break. Merry-go-round dance. I didn't give up, did I? I wasn't even close. That's my resolve speaking, really. And I know you guys out there have the same kind of resolve for life and for goodness, and you know what you can have in life. And you've figured out certain things in life and you realize, you know, how blessed this life can really be. And it all has to do what you observe, what you focus on. And these people focus on us instead of focusing on God. They focus on us and use us as their offering, as their sacrifice, as their way to stimulate the fantasies that they have. And they do it at our expense and to our pain. That's how desperate they are to conceal the hidden self that they've constructed. It's all a performance. It's all an act. It's all fake. And it is scripted street theater that the target is submerged in 24/7. Staged accidents. I can't tell you how many times the glass shattered on my passenger that I was taking. I can't tell you how many times that somebody looked over at me driving on the freeway, just smirks at me in a red and white car. Always a red and white car. 11 times in 1 year, just red and white cars. Okay, this is what I'm saying. Trying to kill you, trying to make it look like an accident, run their car into you. They would smirk at me and then just drive their car into me. And if I started talking about that, that makes you look crazy. You see what I'm saying? That's why they do such sensational abuse, because it's hidden in plain sight, because nobody is going to believe you. And especially when you look into it, and I'm going to show you in a second, if somebody just does a common search about remote neural monitoring or microwave energy weapons or electronic harassment, they just call it a conspiracy theory on Wikipedia and say it's a delusion. Okay. Meanwhile, we have all these United States offices, you know, talking about and investing in, and we follow the money and we see what's going on. You know, it's not that complicated, but there's these layers of gatekeeping over this hidden technology that's being used on the United States citizens. Most of these tactics have been used by former COINTELPRO operations by the United States, Russia, and Germany against their civilian populations, and we know this. So blacklisting. Been there, done that. Mail interference. Been there, done that. That's what they've done to me. Vandalism, sabotage, framing me. Of course. Staged accidents. Citizen informant squads follow me around for overt surveillance, gang stalking, poisoning, and drugging. They did that to me. Incarceration into prisons and mental institutions. Been there, done that. They have tried to break me in every single way, just like they've tried to break you. I don't know if any of you have been arrested falsely in the middle of the night with no charges, and then they just release you and they do that again and again. Just come to your house, drag you out of bed, flash a flashlight in your eyes, throw you in the back of the squad car, not tell you anything, chain you to the wall when you get to the jail in a reverse stress position of torture, handcuffed with your hands behind your back on a rail that's way too low, so you got to duck down. So you're like squatting position, handcuffed behind your back to a rail for 2 hours. It's ever been done to you? The torture, the breakdown, the false arrests, the spreading of rumors. You know, they just take that mugshot and spread it and say, even though they haven't charged you with anything, they just say, he's a criminal. Look at his mugshot. That's what they do. So incarceration into prisons and mental institutions, trying to force drug you, trying to suffocate you with just, we're concerned. We're here to keep things safe, and we think that you are a danger to yourself and to the community. This is what they say. This is what their arrogance speaks like. You see what I'm saying? And electromagnetic weaponry. I'm just continuing to read. It is a historical fact that the U.S. has officially targeted its civilian populations on multiple occasions. Programs such as MKUltra and COINTELPRO can't be denied. So harassment campaigns. You know, in Germany, these methods were continued in two programs, and we've heard about Zerzatzung and directive perceptions, controlling people's behavior through torture, through intimidation. And so we see all this. This is some of the history, and these programs were designed to secretly destroy a target's personal and professional life, ruin them financially, and prevent them from reaching their potential. I mean, this couldn't be farther from the truth. I mean, this is like, you know, this isn't far from the truth is what I was trying to say. This is like parallel to what really occurs in all our lives. So with the intention to produce irreversible, depressive, and panic-stricken behaviors. Yep. That's why they surprise you and ambush you. That gets your adrenaline going. And they want to keep you there, redline you, and get your body to collapse. That's what they're trying to do. And what the hidden evil appears to be is a combination of various COINTELPRO operations used by oppressive regimes on their civilian population. It has been refined and deployed globally. How true is that? You want to go to another country, you're going to find that many other countries participate in this kind of torture and abuse. So rather than using a blunt, overt attack against a fully functional person, it says they usually attack covertly and conceal their harassment by using existing events that occur naturally. Again, they will take something that has happened naturally and try to piggyback off of it and create a deeper hook in you and try to drive that problem deeper to make it look more realistic and make it attached to you better. So they will piggyback off of things you have said and done and try to spin it and make it look like you are saying something other than what you're saying or doing, and always associated with violence because they want to make you look like you're violent and dangerous. That gives them the excuse to use force, this intermediate force capabilities against you. So it's always made it to look like existing events that just occur naturally. Remember how many times I say that which is common and ordinary to the onlooker, okay? And it is the frequency and the rate by which these patterns happen that reveal you're a targeted individual. There's usually cover for the harassment as well. We always say plausible deniability. Any abuse that this government is doing to you, they will create the moral high ground before they do it to you. And then they will have the plausible deniability to engage you, but yet cover and conceal it. However, it is probably a statistical rarity for some of these staged events to occur as often as they do, this article says, but I disagree with that. I think that there is like a career choice, basically, that these people are offered. They conceal much of their harassment using what appears to be a simple formula. Yeah, following the model of what you would describe the psychology to be of a covert, malignant, sadistic, narcissistic personality disorder. And you just look at all that those people do in their behavior, and that seems to be the model at which they are provoking and engaging indirectly by non-touch torture tactics. So it is the frequency, I always say, that describes how often an event occurs. This is what I say all the time. That's why I'm at this article, and I really appreciate the millennialreport.com. I'm just looking at this, and it is exactly what I say. It is looking at the frequency, meaning how often these patterns continue to keep occurring that are like very rare in the first place. Describes how often an event occurs, frequency. I'm just reading this. It also pertains to the number of acts within a single event. Again, the duration pertains to the length of this single event. It also pertains to the nonstop nature of the harassment in general. You see, it's these things that targeted individuals that are real begin to start becoming aware of. It's the intensity, the amplification of acts such as sound, sight, crowding within an event, or just other things like, one neighbor arrives and, another one leaves always with you every time you want to come and go, and follows you to the store, and basically crosses your path in the store as well, and gets out of their car at the same time as you as well, and then reaches for the items that you want to reach for as well, and then checks out with you as well, and then goes to their car and puts their groceries in at the same time as you as well. And if you don't get out of your car, they don't get out of the car. They just sit there with you and hold up their cameras and mock and laugh and chuckle and think it's cute and funny to follow us around and harass us. So it is about the frequency and the duration and the intensity. And that's what we're looking at in this article. And that's what we should pay attention to when you're a targeted individual and you start seeing these patterns and you start saying red cars are following me. You got to make sure that you drive it deeper and let them know that it's not just once, but it's every day, 24/7 in a repeated, deliberate, intentional pattern where you can't get away from it. And it's the only thing you see, and you are submerged. You are submerged in only seeing red and white cars. They surround you whenever you go outside, and it is every day, nonstop, 24/7, everything you do. Okay. And over a period of time of illustrating that and showing that, you can clearly see this pattern of abuse hidden in plain sight, color sensitizing that's used for subversive abuse, for hidden abuse. That's why it's done, to abuse you and hide the abuse. So the basic protocol, it begins with the surveillance of targets, monitoring all their private lives and entry into their homes and break-ins. That's been done to me so many times. They want you to feel like you possess nothing, that you own nothing, you have nothing, and you are their property. And they let you know that. This is done so, their personal traits can be cataloged. That's what it talks about. But this is a basic protocol that the perpetrators begin with, states McKinney, but the TI targeted individual contributes to the modification. Again, it's all customizable abuse to the target, very customized. They know what you think, they know what you're going to do before you even do it. So some of the tactics below have been called street theater, harassment skits, or staged events. They are planned harassment skits such as blocking, getting in your way, crossing your path, which is an intercept. Like in football, when someone intercepts the ball, it is someone crossing your path and going after the same space or the same item as you at the same time to box you out, to disassociate you, to disconnect you, and make you feel like you can't go to the store because every time you do, you're followed around and people take what's yours and what belongs to you, what's even in your hands, and will fight over it and yank it out of your hands and take it at the same time as you. This is the type of harassment that I'm talking about, where they follow you into the store and do these kind of things, or scream as if they're a Karen and a victim. Oh, help, help, help. This man assaulted me. That's what they love to do. They love to follow you around and embarrass you and humiliate you and chuckle and laugh and smirk and smile when nobody else is looking and it's just you. Okay, and it's intended to be overheard, the street theater, the blocking, the swarming, the conversations that go around the target, which contain information about the target's personal life. Again, directed speech. So, and there are all these other headings in this article, and you just type in targeted individuals, the various means of attack, abuse, and assault, and you can go through this article and see these headings and just familiarize yourself with this. McKinney states that medical doctors, as well as psychiatrists and psychologists, appear to be providing cover for this program. How many of us have said that? So I'm just going off my own experience to discern this article, but, it is a system of abuse and control. And it even says this is similar to what was done in Russia, like the Bolshevik Revolution, where enemies of the dictatorship would be thrown into mental institutions and drugged beyond recovery. It has been done in world history. Okay. And so we see this, and here's just people's comments below. But I just wanted to kind of cover this article about this and the means that they have to use electromagnetic pulse energy and other types of silent weapon systems to stimulate and to provide impulse and to, provide the neurological brainwave patterns. So if you're a pure person, they'll attack you with perverted thoughts. It is to change and modify your behavior and to invert reality and invert who you are really. It is a constant attack and hijacking on your identity and bringing that into question. You're a pervert, you're mentally ill, you're crazy, and they set it all up and get all the breakdowns and put you in these positions and then turn around and also are so abusive that they just don't want to acknowledge the destruction that they've been doing and hiding and be ashamed of it. That's the last thing they're going to do. They get off on doing this to us. They get off on it. It's a power trip. They are infantile, immature, little spoiled, rotten brats. That's what we're dealing with, basically. The mentality of those who perp us and are empty inside with total darkness. And there is nothing in them that we could ever do. You know, there was nothing that we could ever do to get their attention, is what I'm trying to say. So look at the title of this: Targeted Individuals, the Various Means of Attack, Abuse, and Assault. And remember, I told you that they can broadcast images while you sleep, and they can use voice to skull and talk to you all day to try to tempt you, to get you to go along with those impulses and images. Okay. And it's all behavior modification. If you're straight, they try to make you gay. If you're gay, they try to make you straight. This is something that's not really talked about by targeted individuals in the sexual harassment and rape and torture that they're doing to many of us. Okay. And don't be ashamed of it, man. You know what I'm saying? Don't be ashamed of it. You know, this is all to shame you and humiliate you, and to make you feel like these ideas came from you, and get you to internalize and to accept the inner dialogue that's synthetic. It's not coming from you. It's synthetic. It is in a broadcast coming to your brain. And you know that it's synthetic, and God has given you the ability to detect it and realize that this falsified stream of energy has been trying to animate your brain, your body, your impulses, your nervous system, okay, in this broadcast that we are all submerged in, and in which they can direct the energy at whoever they want. Okay. Ideas come, thoughts come, impulses come, lusts come, and all these things come to you as a form of warfare, as a form of humiliation and attack and domination and submission. And it is all about the satanic inversion of who you really are, and trying to make you, you know, and lead you into becoming something other than what you are. And usually it's the opposite of what you are. If you're a good person, they want to turn you into a vile creature. You know what I'm saying? And that would make them feel better about themselves, because right now, as it stands, your light shines so bright that, you know, all they can do is get enraged. You know what I'm saying? So let's go to the next article here. This is cybertorture.com. I just saw this article and I wanted to bring it to your guys' attention. I love you all. I appreciate you all. I'm just sharing the best that I have every day. And, you know, that means being present. That means, that's what I mean when I say the best every day is just being present. That's my best. And being able to talk about these things with you guys really is important to me, because they've cut me off from all life, basically, for so many years. And it's so nice to hear from everyone. And I love when you guys comment on different videos and, you know, share in this same experience. It's not, you know, something that I'm thankful for, you know, the suffering and the abuse and the torture. But at the same time, this has all been an escort to something much bigger for all of us. And most of us are waking up to the fact that we have these powers and abilities, and we are not as weak as they've wanted us to think about ourselves. They want us to think, you know, we're defective. That's the main staple behind, you know, behind this kind of undermining of and giving up of control of your autonomy, you know, and the war is against your autonomy. They want to fully control you inwardly, not just outwardly, but inwardly. So remote neural monitoring and directed energy weapons, a targeted individual submission to the United Nations. So someone submitted this to the United Nations, and of course, you know, the United Nations, we've looked at the disarmament treaty that they have used in terms of using these silent weapon systems worldwide, and putting a ban on, you know, limits and restrictions, and trying to make it appear that, you know, it's being governed when it is a matter of national security and considered, you know, something along the lines of, you know, national security type stuff where you can't even investigate or even look into it. So in a compelling submission to the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, which means that they don't care about human rights. That's what you got to understand. This whole reality has been inverted. A self-identified targeted individual from India details experiences of covert torture using advanced military-grade technologies. Sounds like us. Sounds like our complaint. This document, titled Inputs for Psychosocial Dynamics conducive to torture and ill treatment, sheds light on the alleged use of remote neural monitoring, mind control, and directed energy weapons against civilians. United Nations Human Rights Office. So here's the key allegations we'll cover. The submission outlines several forms of covert torture and surveillance. And this was submitted at the United Nations, Ukraine 8, United Nations Human Rights Office, 8 United Nations Human Rights Office. I don't know what this signifies, this link. It must just be part of the link, but remote neural monitoring, number 1, RNM. The author claims that perpetrators can read and display the target's thoughts on a screen, effectively being decoded, right? The signals, the wave patterns are decoded in a bidirectional broadcast system that is the broadcast over all of us, okay? And you are the node because it's your brain and body in this internet of bodies. Do you understand what I'm saying? So effectively turning the individual's eyes into a live camera based on the decoding of the brainwave pattern and signature. United Nations Human Rights Office, okay? Voice to skull, V2K technology described as a transmission of voices directly to the skull, causing psychological distress, making you overhear conversations nonstop, or impersonating your own voice to torment and torture you and get you wrestling all day long in your mind with yourself. And then later, years go by and you're like, you start to detect that it's synthetic and you're like, and as soon as you do, it stops. You know, this isn't mental illness. This is people complaining about being under V2K and the fray effect and hearing conversations being broadcast over the target and to the target's brain so that the target can hear these conversations going on. And it's usually derogatory, sexually abusive, once you realize that it's a technology and synthetic and that these thoughts aren't yours, you will start to get freedom and they will, maybe lessen the attacks. I know that, nothing I do really, they don't allow you to feel like you're in control ever. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sure that's why they take you up and take you down and take you up to dislodge you, because that wears you out. Directed energy weapons dues, the use of energy-based weapons to inflict physical harm without leaving evidence. These are worldwide complaints, guys, submitted to the UN. But it's just a conspiracy theory. Organized stalking, coordinated harassment by groups to intimidate and isolate the target. That's what we all say. Dream manipulation. And this is where they use sexual torture and abuse to rape you in your dreams and things like that. And to have, if you're straight, you'll have somebody trying to have homosexual sex with you in your dream, like things like that. So, or if you're gay, it'll be the opposite. You know what I mean? So, but the interference with sleep patterns and the induction of artificial dreams, like I said, these methods are described as no touch or covert because they're not actually present around the target, but they can inflict bodily damage and harm and pleasure on the brain and body and nervous system from a distance. So it is a wireless remote system, making them difficult to detect and prove, obviously. This is why they do it. This is why they go balls to the wall, in other words, because they know that it is all silent and undetectable, thereby rendering existing legal frameworks ineffective in providing relief to victims. United Nations Human Rights Office, bam. So the global context, the phenomenon of targeted individuals is not isolated to India. Globally, numerous individuals report similar experiences of covert harassment and torture. The lack of physical evidence and the advanced nature of the alleged technologies contribute to skepticism and challenges in seeking justice. Well, they designed it that way. That's why they say national security, because you can't investigate it. And it is classified that way so that it can be hidden in plain sight and hidden and go on. It's very simple to understand. You have no right to look into these things because we're here to keep you safe and save lives. And you want us to keep you safe, don't you? Well, then let us do our job. And the experts, we just give control over to the so-called experts, which really aren't experts. And we got to stop worshiping these white lab coats. We got to stop worshiping people in authority that are hired and paid to bring about, this collapse and control game that these mega corporations and the government is playing with the world to bring in their new system. So scientific and technological considerations, while the technologies described are controversial, yeah, but they exist, I assure you. Some scientific research aligns with the capabilities mentioned, right? So microwave auditory effect. Research has shown that pulsed microwave frequencies can produce auditory sensations in humans, potentially explaining V2K experiences. Brain-computer interface. Advanced in BCIs have demonstrated the ability to interpret neural signals, raising concerns about potential misuse for surveillance. Directed energy research. Military research into DEWs has explored non-lethal weapons, as Colonel Wendell Limbach says, that can cause discomfort or incapacitation without visible injury. So don't you think they're going to turn the power up to full? You know what I mean? Like, if it leaves no sign of physical injury, you can stop somebody's heart. You can shut down their brain activity. I mean, you know what I mean? You can damage the organs in the body and burn them alive while the person is standing. I mean, it's important to note that while these technologies exist in research and development phases, it says here their deployment against civilians remains unverified and highly contested. Well, obviously, it's going to be that way. They don't want people to know this power and dynamic shift that has gone on in the background, and it's all sold you as something that will benefit you, something that will keep you safe, and something that will save your life in the end. Okay. And let the experts handle keeping you safe. Okay. Let the experts, the quote unquote experts, handle keeping you safe. Don't think for yourself. And, don't research, don't look into it, don't realize the obviousness. So when I read an article like this, I can have discernment and realize when they say something like this, we already know it's like 20 years ahead of what they're saying. And that if they're talking about these technologies are still in their developmental phases, we know that they've been around for a long time. That's what I'm trying to say. So this is the awakening. This is the discernment that we all are gaining. And it is powerful. It is powerful. It's something that they couldn't manage and control and try to digitize, really. I mean, of course, they've tried to digitize and steal our identity that way. You know what I mean? Because they want to be us. That's why you've got 20 people synced with you coming and going and saying, things you've said in private again and again and again to your face, like everybody's on the same brainwave length, thinking the same thing at the same time and talking to each other about it. Strangers, people that don't know you, people that don't hear your private conversations, suddenly start talking about the private conversations that you're having. You see what I'm saying? They get hijacked and taken over and are used to intimidate. It's a weapon system. And these are people that have been weaponized, family, friends. They have become weaponized and are used and are very dangerous because they're not in control of themselves. The submission in this call to action, it says the submission urges the United Nations and international human rights organizations to investigate the use of advanced technologies for covert torture. Yeah, do you think it might be time to do that? And what good is that going to do? When there's money that backs up, and money is the bottom line for the technologies, and it is a business of human trafficking. It is a business of doing these kind of things to people. You know what I mean? For research and development purposes or whatever you want to say. But there are many groups, and we're all experiencing this total destruction of the natural and the normal happenings in our daily life. And we recognize, it says, the experiences of targeted individuals as legitimate human right concerns. Yeah, it's a war crime. It's a war crime what they're doing to all of us. And, I'm saying it to many targeted individuals out there. Is not what you have gone through a war crime? Having to make you fight for your survival and taking swipes at you and your resources and the things that belong to you long enough until you're isolated and alone and have no resources left, and then they end you? Is that the way things are going to go in America under this terrorism law and under profile policing and under the emergency police force that is called for, under the threat fusion centers with the Marines and the JIFCO? So develop legal frameworks to address and prevent the misuse. They're never going to do that. They just give the appearance that they're doing that. And that is the disarmament treaty with electromagnetic energy weapons that the UN has talked about before, and the nations like Russia and China and the US have met together at the UN to discuss the use of these weapons and how they can be deployed and in what way they can be deployed. You understand? And what can be done to citizens as less than lethal torture, but still shape and modify behavior through pain compliance. That's how arrogant they are. They think that they can get away with torturing you to get you to go along with and submit to and put you out of the way of whatever they just say, you're in our way. It's not that you're really in their way or interfering with their operations, as Colonel Wendell Limbach said. Interfering with their operations means you don't like being tortured and speak out about it. That's all that means. Okay, that's the arrogance and the entitlement behind, a lot of these psychopaths that just feed off of imposing, their narcissistic governance over everyone. So the conclusion here is the submission to the OHCHR highlights serious allegations of covert torture using advanced technologies. And we heard Colonel Wendell Limbach the other day call for the use of those technologies, calling them less than lethal weapon systems and communication systems, calling them systems that are typically used under the level of armed conflict, but that logic says, if you take it a little farther, that there is a conflict in the United States and that their presence is needed because of what they're doing to people. And they know that they need this as a layer of protection because people are waking up and seeing. And so they just pit our own military against citizens in this shadowy war where they can just label and profile you, and with no proof, no evidence, no nothing, with this open-ended definition system that they use when they label people as terrorists in the United States. And 99.999% of the time, they are just labeled, and there is no evidence, no proof, no backing, except for the evidence that they manufacture and create to carry out the abuse. Okay. And that's usually the way it is. So that was this article, and you can read it, and you can go to cybertorture.com, remote neural monitoring and directed energy weapons, a targeted individual submission to the United Nations. But I guess they just don't exist, right? But millions all over the world are complaining about being burnt in their own house and being tortured and their behavior being modified, and especially through sexual torture, like I was talking about a little bit today, just touching upon the fact that they use sexual torture and abuse and rape and can rape you with electromagnetic energy, not just your brain, not just your nervous system, but they can stimulate you sexually. They can do a lot of things in your dreams. They can distract you all day long with perversity in your mind, with images being broadcast to the visual cortex where it's so distracting that you can't think of anything else. And you just have to, get through it in order to, get around what they're doing to you, because it's a hijacking of your neurological pattern, of your own pattern of thinking. It gets suppressed by this falsified stream of energy in a more powerful broadcast overlaid over your natural neurology and the patterns that are associated with your brainwave activity. That identity that is connected to you is hijacked and replaced by a synthetic stream of energy that is being broadcast. Okay, that's the way this bidirectional stream of data coming to the brain and body of the target is accomplished. Now, look at this. Electromagnetic harassment with torturous patterns. Okay, I saw this article, this PDF, and I thought it was good. And it is like ohchr.org. And that's www.ohchr.org. And you pull up this article, this PDF that is really powerful and good. And it talks about our torture guys. And so groups of people come together and they talk about the different tactics. Electromagnetic harassment with torturous patterns. That's what we all complain about. Electromagnetic torture, cybernetic torture, or cyber torture, the crime that people complain most about on the internet and social media, the relevance to neural weapons, as well as health attacks or health incidents of US and Canada diplomats. So they've looked into these health effects and side effects of having these kind of weapon systems being used, but dynamics conducive to corruption and torture. This PDF says neuroweapons having top secret status similarly to weapons of mass destruction are expected to be subject to limited or non-existent preliminary, or what is that word? I can't even see that. Congressional supervision. They're talking about that they make the weapon systems so they're so novel, so new, so exotic that they're already 20 years ahead and don't need to tell Congress or anybody else in the government. And plus they just declare national security so that you can't ever figure out what's been developed, you know what I mean? Or what they're using on the general public, even though they come out and talk about what they're using. Okay. And the types of platforms, they're kind of generic about it. But if you listen to a lot of different people like Colonel Wendell Limbach, you discover what's really going on at the JIFCO as they operate domestically and work with the threat fusion centers to go after innocent American citizens by profile policing. It is all predictive policing. This is the new policing, and using groups and mobs of people that are hive-minded like an army as a weapon against you. That is what they can do in an instant, at the speed of light. Everybody around the target can be hijacked in an instant. And you know that I know that you know that I know that I'm right about it. And you've seen it with your own eyes, and it blows you away. The coordination, the organization, how they get ahead of you and position the street theater before you even get there. And they know where you're going to be. So these neuroweapons having top secret status, like weapons of mass destruction. So that's why, they can keep denying it and keep saying, people are conspiracy theorists and mentally ill that talk about these things because, they don't want people knowing the level of control, because I think people would be enraged, But the electromagnetic harassment with torturous patterns has been referred to as the quote unquote crime that people complain most about on the internet. It is argued that the health incidence of health attacks, according to the terms of the U.S. State Department, which affected the U.S. embassy diplomats in Cuba and China, are similarly the Canada embassy diplomats in Cuba are linked to this phenomenon. Okay, that's what they're saying in this PDF. A precedent is found in the microwave irradiation of the U.S. embassy in Moscow. Many thousands of people internationally complain of being electromagnetically harassed with torturous patterns, electromagnetic torture, cybernetic torture, or cyber torture. They call it those different things. But the health attacks are currently the object of an interagency investigation of the U.S. government, coordinated by the Health Incident Task Force. You think they're going to actually really do something? Or are they just there to cover it up? What do you guys think? Are they there to just, legitimize the deniers and the people that want to cover this up and keep using these systems of domination? Maybe, you know what I mean? It's a tight-knit group of people that have given themselves permission to use these things to become God over us. Do you understand? And that's how serious this rabbit hole goes. That is how the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. But we got to wake up. We got to start understanding that there is this health incident task force and realize that there have been many health complications that are associated with high levels of radiation and cancer that they can give you. Do you want cancer? Do you want to be radiated to death? Do you understand that EMF has been weaponized and is broadcast at your body and brain? And they are radiating you to death and frying your brain and heating up your brain. And do you know how bad that is for you? Do you know how wrong that is to do to people? 3 scientific publications present evidence of brain damage of the diplomats. You see? That's how wrong it is. You see? A U.S. congressional hearing reiterated the diagnosis of brain injury as a result of the attacks. The U.S. Government Accountability Office, which is the U.S. Anti-Accountability Office, remember the inversion, remember this, the way we have to, realize that, war is peace, freedom is slavery in this inverted reality. So this Government Accountability Office doesn't do anything to be or hold anybody accountable. They're there to cover things up. That's what you got to know. Assessed the response of the State Department, published a report. Oh, how convenient. They investigated themselves. That's so great. The fox guarding the hen house. So I'm so glad that they investigated themselves, right? And presented its findings to Congress, which Congress doesn't know anything about these weapons. We're in a dictatorship run by emergency executive orders. That's why Congress never reads the bills that are passed, because they are suspended as our form of government under emergency wartime powers. Look it up. So given the neurological nature of the attack, the technological means that would have been used are defined as neural weapons. A group of experts, including the first physician who examined the U.S. diplomat, gave presentations on the health attacks of neural weapons events held by SOF. WERX is the name of the company, and the U.S. Special Operations Command. And, the JIFCO, a briefing of the Pentagon's chief of staff. At the JIFCO, they test these weapon systems too. And it was conducted by the same group of experts. So the U.S. victims of electromagnetic harassment have provided comment to the Presidential Commission for the Study of Bioethical Issues, created by President Obama in March and May of 2011 in Europe. The Ministry of Defense of Poland conducted a geographical analysis of complaints of Polish victims for electromagnetic attacks in 2016. Following correspondence with the ministry, Polish victims have been heard by the Inspectorate of Innovative Defense Technologies of the Ministry of Defense. So people in other countries are begging their government to stop torturing them. In other words, among different protests against electromagnetic harassment, torture, 2 international rallies have been held on the 29th of August in 2019 and 2018. So this is obviously an old PDF. Victims of electromagnetic harassment, often called targeted individuals, or TIs, report. Let's go through these torturous routines such as head or body electromagnetic stimulation. Been there, done that. It's been done to me every day. Intense sudden contractions of muscles, fibers, equivalent to painful stimulus of being hit. That's what they do. As soon as I fall asleep, they jerk my body and muscles and jerk my arms so that I wake up. Different stimulation patterns generating miscellaneous effects of pain, tingling, pins and needles. And I've talked about this, how microwaves can, cause this sensation of pins and needles on your chest or wherever they're microwaving you. Like they burnt my chest for a year straight. I had to ice my chest and roll around in a bed because they were burning my nipples, burning the sensitive areas of my body. And you roll around in bed and you go to the doctor. They don't know what's going on, but they see the burn marks. Then later they realize what's going on and report you to the local sheriff's office because you're losing your mind and dangerous. We can't have one like this, waking up and putting on the glasses just like in They Live, So it's this intense heating or burning or itching sensations where the skin is itching and itching and itching. And, they'll do that a lot to me right when I go to sleep. They'll hit me with this energy weapon and it will make my skin just itch. It's not allergies. It's none of that. They will make you itch and drive you crazy so you can't rest, so you can't fall asleep. It is torture and it is a routine and it is a pattern. So artificial tinnitus, hearing voices, the ringing in your ears all the time and where your ear kind of goes deaf and it's like ringing really loud, and mental manipulation, mental content presentation. We talked about this. They're able to broadcast images to the visual cortex and torture you with images all day long. Usually they'll broadcast images of you being tortured to death and seeing your own death again and again and again to torment you and scare you all the time. But it is mental content and presentation, insertion and extraction of thoughts, personal thoughts, content being repeated to them in an interval, every few seconds. Like when you go in the shower and you got a song lyric in your head and you don't know where it came from, you didn't listen to the song recently, and then it just repeats all day. And that goes on every day so that you can't function and can't do anything because of the distraction of that song lyric being repeated and told to you again and again and again on a loop, like a bot is just talking to you all day and telling you this through a brain-to-brain interface, this manipulation of a remote human operator and the military being a part of this and the GIFCO being a part of becoming these remote human operators and to dominate cognitive influence. You see what I'm saying? And determining certain functions of the body and the brain and the organs, motor functions such as moving and limb function. You see what I'm saying? Targeted individuals are being tortured silently while certain phenomena such as hearing the global hum, which affects 4% of the world's population, may be indicative of the fact that the effects are being experienced by a much larger population than of just targeted individuals. Yeah, the whole world is singled out for this experiment. And it doesn't matter where you go. You can't get away from the kill box and the control box that they have put around all of us. It is a prison system. Okay? It is a prison system. And you guys understand that. So, but given the extremely advanced nature of symptoms, reported mental manipulation, the associated neuroweapons and are termed as weapons of mass disruption. And that's what, a lot of the Marines talk about when they use less than lethal intermediate force capability weapons and should be considered equivalent in terms of national security to weapons of mass destruction. They say it is expected that these would be top secret and would be handled only by a few people in the highest military ranks and would probably be subject to limited or non-existent paramilitary or preliminary. I'm sorry, I can't even see this, guys. I can't even, but you guys get the point. Congressional supervision. I can't see that word because the word looks blended together to me, but generic reporting, citing indispensable covert national security operations. Like I said, national security, you can't investigate this because we just label people as terrorists in America now and then suspend their rights and torture them with no due process just because they're classified, they're profiled. And the people that worship the AI will just say, this is our God, it can never be wrong, and you're profiled, even though we've seen the many mistakes that the flock cameras have been making, right? Getting innocent people hemmed up and caught up. But this setting would cancel institutional controls, thereby creating environments conducive to corruption, obviously. It is important that society addresses electromagnetic harassment with torturous patterns or electromagnetic torture. This is what I've been saying. Cybernetic torture or cyber torture. It constitutes a significant human rights issue and with severe risks on the health. And it's been studied and researched for years, guys. They know what they're doing to us, guys, and well-being and the life of individuals. Yeah, they disrupt everything and collapse everything in your life. It is also important to comprehend the implications as the complaints of the targeted individuals referring to both torture as well as mental manipulation may be indicative of a future where mental interference may be performed in large scale with imperceptible nuances and nudging of thinking towards certain directions for political and economic interference. It is urgent to address this phenomenon. Okay, so we call on this PDF, this right here, the electromagnetic torture PDF that describes the torturous patterns of behavior and a call to make it stop. And, we got people all over the world calling on their governments to make it stop. But of course, when we go to the electronic harassment of Wikipedia and, you're just a NPC and you have a family member that's like, I'm being tortured and my car's being destroyed and my job just fired me and my bank account just got frozen and I can't go anywhere without people following me around and insulting me everywhere I go to try to engage me in a physical fight. I don't know what's going on here. And they'll just go on to Wikipedia. You'll have family and friends that are just very ignorant and NPCs themselves. And they'll just go on to Wikipedia and read this. This article is about persecutory delusion. So right off the bat, they're going to call it a delusion regarding remote harassment and torture. And we've seen military colonels talking about the use of these novel weapon systems and silent weapon systems. We know about the LRAD. We know about laser systems. We know about infrared. We know about microwave pulse energy. We know about V2K. It's all developed and deployed already. So for anybody that wants to debunk this in the first line of Wikipedia, you just have to go and research and look at some of my videos where I point that out, where and who and why, and the investors that are involved in the military contractors that make the weapon systems for the government. Okay. And it's not a secret. They meet together. They talk about their new weapons systems and how they can deploy them in better and better ways. Okay. And that's going on 24/7 in the background. While meanwhile, this electronic harassment is called a delusion. And for covert energy weapon attacks against the U.S. officials, see Havana syndrome. For harassment on social media and websites, see cyberbullying. So those are different terms, but we're talking about electronic harassment, electromagnetic torture of the body and brain, and psychotronic torture is a conspiracy theory, they say right off the bat. Okay. Describing the hostile use of mundane electromagnetic devices such as RF and radio waves, and they use the Bluetooth for a communication system that goes on in the background. You know what I'm saying? Very low frequency waves that communicate data in the background all the time as a way to track you and trace you and put, Apple AirTags around you. But this is way bigger than that. That's just one way of surveilling you, but they've got more sophisticated way of using these broadcast systems that broadcast electromagnetic energy and certain frequency spectrums to be weaponized and used against the general public. And so, but they want to call it a conspiracy theory while the Colonel Wendell Limbach is openly deploying it and trying to find new reasons to use it on the general public and justify their presence of less than lethal force and a standing army, basically, of dudes in regular clothes that use this intermediate force capabilities to potential and would-be and profiled people that they deem as a threat. Okay. But they get to define what the threat is in the first place, guys. And they keep changing the definition of that to selectively target whoever they want. So, and the definition changes again and again and again over the years. And now this whole apparatus is being directed at the American people and at trying to convince people that Americans are enemy combatants and, trying to create such division that, us against them type mentality of hostility. And that is what they push for, and use the energy weapons to even stir up crowds and do all these things that they do at these manufactured synthetic protests that are really hive-minded experiments. They believe that, malicious actors are transmitting sounds and thoughts into people's heads, affecting their bodies and harassing them. Generally, the delusion often concerns government agents. Well, if the history shows and the Frey effect shows that microwave pulse energy can create an auditory hearing effect, and that science is all backed and has been around forever. It's been around for such a long time, and many different doctors and scientists talk about it and talk about how it's possible to use and have backed up the effect that people are complaining about. In other words, I guess all these doctors and PhDs are wrong, but, or like Wi-Fi radar in your house with your router and watching you from room to room. So they use radar. They've weaponized everything to surveil us, all our smart appliances. That's just one layer of this surveillance grid that they have put in place to dominate and break all of us and squeeze us. And this surveillance, the surveillance techniques are all done to carry out their goals, and they won't tell the general public what their goals are. And I'm just saying that they're sustainable development goals to carry out depopulation, because they've got to have you to a manageable number. That is why there's this clash, manufactured clash of civilizations and ideologies. They want to create a barrier between themselves and the general public, so the general public never really recognizes who is the one causing all the things that are going on that are toxic and wrong and damaging. And they're in the background like a low-grade fever, adding to the problem, saying we're here to keep you safe. Okay, using torture and abuse to keep people safe is hardly keeping people safe. But this is what is done. This is how disconnected many people have to be to go along with imposing this kind of militarized police state where the Marines and the threat fusion centers and Homeland Security and FEMA, the local FEMA pastor, you know what I mean? And these cults that Christians go to today, which I would advise to run as fast as you can out of your local 501c3 cult called a church in America, where the pastor's probably on the payroll of FEMA and Homeland Security running these programs on you and on the local community, keeping things safe. The do-gooders are always the ones that never question anything, never look into anything. They just project their do-gooding onto others, thinking that, everybody thinks like them. No, that's not the way reality is, brah. You know what I'm saying? So the experiences of people who describe themselves as undergoing electronic harassment using esoteric technology, it's not esoteric, okay? But this Wikipedia article tries to discourage your interest, and who call themselves targeted individuals vary, but experiences often include hearing voices in their heads, calling them by name, often mocking them or others around them, as well as physical sensations like burning. They also describe being under physical surveillance by one or more people. Yeah, for me, it's like 20 against 1 every day. But many of these people act and function otherwise normally. And included among them are people who have successful careers and lives and otherwise, and who find these experiences confusing, upsetting, and sometimes shameful, but entirely real. And they use news stories, military journals, and declassified national security documents to support their allegations that government have developed technology that can send voices into people's heads and cause them to feel things. The New York Times estimated that. And remember in Iraq, the Iraq war, when they went into the Iraq war and they drove those guys out of the cave by using directed energy weapons, voice to skull, and drove those guys out from their hiding place under the cave. And then, like, it was in the news, the military used this novel weapon system to use the voice of God and broadcast this synthetic voice in the enemies' heads so that they thought they were hearing God. And then God was telling them to come up and to surrender to U.S. forces. Do you remember that news article? You can go back and try to keyword search that. If you know how to keyword search what I'm talking about, military, doing this. But one has to think of the TI phenomenon in terms of people with paranoid symptoms, they say, who have hit upon the gang stalking idea as an explanation of what is happening to them. Mental health professionals say that TIs can experience hallucinations, and their explanations of being targeted or harassed arise from delusions, disorders, or psychosis. You see? So when you decide that you've had enough of the abuse and the torture and literally dudes following you around all the time, damaging your property, don't look to the damaged property. And the best they'll do is just say you did it to yourself, and then just keep moving forward with your delusional, you have a disorder, you have psychosis. What you see isn't real. Do you see how the system promotes the abuse? They're enablers of the abuse. Do you see that? So they are only there to serve as a way to discredit and legitimize the corruption and attacks that are being carried out on innocent American citizens. Don't look at the videos. Don't look at the color sensitizing. Don't ever look up what street theater is. Don't look up what history shows. Don't look up, what happens in communist countries and these types of police forces that are paramilitary, that are citizen-based, and where the citizens merge with the government to become the eyes and ears of the government. This happens in history again and again and again, yet time and again, they go to the same response to many of us who are exposing this reality and what's going on to mental health professionals. It just is a hallucination. You're just experiencing delusional disorders of psychosis. You think people are following you around everywhere. And you know that nobody's doing that, John. Nobody's following you around and that interested in you. Who are you for these people to be so interested in? What do you have that that would make you so interesting? It's like, I don't know. You know what I mean? These are family members even saying this kind of stuff to me. And it's like, I don't know. I got gifts. I follow God. I'm a child of the light, so Yale psychiatry professor Ralph Hoffman states, just our dear friend, a Freemason, Ralph Hoffman, probably. I mean, if he's working as a professor at an Ivy League school, he's most likely a Freemason because that's, who they install everywhere, whether it's NASA or whoever else, men that are serving the father of lies. And they have no problem lying to you because they worship and serve their God, the devil. Okay, so Hoffman states that people often describe voices in their heads to external sources such as government harassment, God, or dead relatives, or your own voice, and it can be difficult to persuade these individuals that their belief in an external influence is delusional, is what he says. Okay, this is all the medical system has been weaponized against you, and in agreement with the Department of Defense, in agreement with the executive orders, the Emergency Wartime Powers Act, and the Patriot Act, and NDAA, and the evisceration of the Bill of Rights and posse comitatus, and prosecuting a war against innocent citizens because of the potential for those citizens to rise up and see what's really going on. And this takeover in America and the United States, this controlled demolition, a controlled demolition and collapse of the United States into something new that none of us are going to like. And none of us are going to be able to even survive in. That is the level that we're being taken here over our head. The waters are too deep, and that is where they want to bring us. But the court decided to issue an order banning electronic means to further harass Walbert. But of course, just the court, might have looked into it a little bit and realizes, yeah, these weapon systems are real. So we're going to grant you an order banning electronic means from being used to harass this guy. But you know what I mean? They just keep doing it anyways because it can't be detected or proven. And all you get is the symptoms of these problems. But notable crimes, people who describe themselves as undergoing electronic harassment have committed crimes, notably including a number of mass shootings. And we've seen this phenomenon, and I've talked about it before, but the torture that's done and how they hide the abuse and the torture, and they are too busy crazy making as they infiltrate the environment of the target and then start to manipulate the standing and stability and the resources of that target. And it's all to create and escalate desperation to get you to lash out and to get you to fight back. And when you do, you're the terrorist. You see, they just slander you, make up lies about you, make up fake dossiers about you, and even arrest you with no charges and release you just so they can get a mugshot and spread it around in the neighborhood and tell everybody you're a criminal. That is what they do. It's all been done to me, guys. So, but so a 20-year-old man, I can't pronounce this man's name, but held a man and two women hostage, and this psychiatrist is just citing all these people that have, turned to violence and have been really, I believe, conditioned and tortured in the background to feel that they were so desperate that they, had these types of responses and reactions. And what I do know is they push and push and push and push for conflict to occur. And engaging somebody's car, engaging somebody's job, engaging somebody's family life, engaging, and trying to destroy and sacrifice and harm and hurt. And those actions are very obvious. We're not talking about the realm of speculation. We're talking about the actions that the people around the target end up getting caught doing. And they just all agree together that that's not what they're doing. You understand what I'm saying? So that just gets into this. And then, this is something worth reading to counter this stuff, guys, because we know that on Wikipedia, it'd be good to take all this information and counter it. You know what I mean? And really show how off this is and how messed up this is. And just how, all these institutions seek to conceal and cover up these kind of crimes that are done. And it is all about electromagnetic warfare. It is about the new war, the fourth generational war declared on the citizens, because you are enemy combatants worldwide and you are debt on the balance sheet. Do you understand? They've pledged you and me as collateral against the money that the government borrowed. And you and I became collateral. We have been placed on the altar as collateral against the debt that our government borrowed, that we had no clue what they were doing. And that's why we see a police state. emergency rule because the bankruptcy, we never got out of it. And the United States was restructured under emergency executive orders. And that is why we see all these things taking place, and America turned into a dictatorship. And really, guys, that is what it is when they rule by executive order after executive order because of a crisis and an emergency. It gives them the autonomy to evoke emergency wartime powers, and then they can just keep us in a state of crisis and emergency to impose this type of governance and tyranny. And that is why they radicalize society, because it allows them an opportunity to get more involved, guys. Okay. And in warfare, I wanted to emphasize this, that in warfare, they will sexually abuse you and rape you and do whatever it takes to try to warp you and pervert you this way. And I just wanted to bring attention to it, guys. So we're going to go over here really quick. And let's take a look at this, make sure my volume is up. But I want you guys to check this out really quick. It's called Sexual Violence as a Weapon of War. Let's just hear this really quick.
Sexual violence is usually a weapon in war, especially in areas where there's not a lot of security. People take advantage of women, and they use it as a weapon of war.
Okay, and it's not just women. Children and men are included in this, because if you can rape the men, then, you break their, manhood like that. And, you just dominate and break their will and break their soul and rape them in front of their family. That's what goes on with these energy weapons that they're using on the general public to touch you. And I mean that in a literal way, because these waves can influence your behavior and influence your neurology and influence your, nervous system in such ways that, it should be banned. Like, all this stuff should be banned, but it's being promoted, and it is like a runaway train, guys.
In some areas in South Sudan, if you don't have any food to give, you'll be raped. Or if you don't have any money to give, you'll be raped. And if you refuse to be raped, they'll kill your children in front of you, and then you'll be killed. So you really don't have a choice.
See, she's talking about in Africa, there are certain places, but this is all over the world. And, our CIA and government comes in, sets up a third-party proxy army or a stay-behind police force that serves the needs of the United States. And that's where these things start to take place. It always is a third-party proxy army that is trained and used as a weapon. So when the government gets caught being behind it, they can just say, we didn't know about it, and we were never a part of that. But that is how the government always abuses, is going to be with that plausible deniability, guys, and using these systems to abuse us and hurt us and control us, and how often they sexually abuse the target with EMF broadcast systems to torture and torment the target and to distract the target all day long, to neutralize the target all day long with this behavior inversion that they like to broadcast on the target. They want to see you being the exact opposite of what originally made you a target, your identity and your shine, and their desire to want to steal that away from you and digitize it and take it for their own and consume it in this hive-minded way where they get to just sync themselves up to your life force, I guess, and then just suck your life away as they copy you and mimic you and mirror you and say the same things as you and dress like you and come and go with you. I mean, we're talking some serious war crimes that are being done and committed here. And I just wanted to say, again, to remind you that sexual violence has always been used as a weapon of war, as you heard this woman describe on Doctors Without Borders.
So it's a very difficult situation to be in. My name is Jamie. I am a nurse with Doctors Without Borders. In Bentu protection camp, it's pretty much a swamp. There's nothing growing inside the camp, and the refugees or the civilians that are getting protection, they're getting food rations, but they're not getting anything to cook their food. So
yeah, and so they set up a paramilitary police force that terrorizes the people, a stay-behind army that carries out the interests of more powerful countries, and they just terrorize the people, forcibly inoculate, do all these things to these people, strip them of any humanity, any dignity, and they practice on how low can they take a society and what will people put up with. That's the game they play. And unfortunately, as we know that this abuse is done incrementally and death by 1,000 cuts and subtly over time, that people don't detect they're a frog in a pot burning alive because the water is slowly heated up. If the water burnt right away, we'd jump out of the pot right away. But this is a manufactured dependency done by abuse to take us on a ride, folks. That's what it is.
So a lot of the people have to leave the camp every day to collect firewood outside the camp. The men can't go because they're targets for the soldiers outside the camp. So it's usually the women and the children that leave the camp to collect firewood. And when they do, there's a lot of times we hear stories that they get raped, often gang raped.
Yeah, I mean, the men probably don't go out because they'll be killed. I mean, that's the way they roll down there. You know what I mean? And so, it subjects the women and the children to have to go do these trips to get resources to survive. And along the way, they're raped and beaten and raped and beaten and raped. And it's like just a practice, and you got to understand that this is psychological war, that when there is warfare, rape is permissible by these evil, diabolical, covert, and malignant and sadistic types that love and get off on your pain. And they will use rape and sexual domination and sexual abuse and perversity to drag you under it. And they will submerge you around it, whether it's your thoughts, your ideas that are coming. And you're just like, man, what is going on here? This is so contrary to me and what I like and what I am interested in. Why is this happening to me? And you'll just start to realize, man, these thoughts aren't even my own. And once you come to that place, you will have freedom and the ability to read your active memory. You've got to learn how to, in real time, recognize the conversations going on subtly or even subconsciously. You can tap into that and become aware of what's being spoken subconsciously, even though you can't necessarily hear the voice to skull or the fray effect and the broadcast coming to the brain, speaking to you with voice to skull. Okay, let's keep going.
When they leave the camp to collect firewood. And for some of them, it happens every day. But a lot of people that we encourage to come to the camp feel that there's no need for them to come. Number one, because they feel that they're quite ashamed of what happened, and culturally it's not really accepted. But also they feel that it's happening to them every day, and what's the need to get treatment if they're just going to get raped tomorrow? So it's a very difficult situation to have an answer to, but we do provide services, and we do listen to their stories, and we do write them down so that there's a record of what happens, that it's not just forgotten. So this is happening all over the world. Any area where there's women fleeing, there's people that will be taking advantage of them. It's something that needs to be taken into account and to be brought up. We talk a lot about humanitarian work and medical care, but we also should also speak to the need for protection of women and to stop sexual violence.
Yeah, of course. And it's not just that. She brings up women and her focus is on women, but we all know that, in warfare, sexual violence is used as a weapon of war, and it's been used all throughout history as a weapon of war. That's why, as targeted individuals in America, many targeted individuals complain about images and thoughts to their visual cortex that they can't get out of their head, and dialogue and suggestion. And it appears this way in the person where there is this impulse generated by the synthetic stream of energy that is coming to your brain, people. That is what is going on. When you think of the Gwen Towers sending signals to your phone, why is it such a hard leap of faith for anyone to realize that they've figured out a way to broadcast to us as individuals, as people? And they have high-powered microwave systems and many other systems of domination and control. So I just wanted to say, as we talk about this, and I know it's a heavy topic, but many targeted individuals are sexually assaulted, sexually abused, and raped with EMF broadcast weapon systems, sexually stimulated, warped and corrupted and having that perversity broadcast against you to torture you, to make you give in and give up, to get you under guilt and shame and dishonor. It is what they're always pushing for. But let's take a look at this next video really quick. And it says EM weapons and sexually psychopathic behavior among military brass. So if you just think that the military is there to keep you safe and save lives and that they're there to protect, then I would say you're wrong. And I think the Intermediate Force Capabilities Office does contribute to the use of V2K and the local sheriff's office to be able to attack an individual by trying to justify the torture and the modification of behavior because they deem the person a threat. And so there is an attempt to try to make a alpha male into a homosexual. Do you see what I'm saying? They do this kind of attack and this kind of impulse control to bring you off into left field so that you can't really figure out what's going on. And you're just locked in a cycle, where you are just having all these sensations and you don't know where they're coming from. And we recognize over a period of time, it's like, aha, it's synthetic. And when you discover it's synthetic and you can combat it and read active memory, it allows you to recognize every single time you're being psychically driven. You see, because psychic driving has to do with them speaking to you all the time. And whether subconsciously or consciously, they're speaking to you all the time to drive you crazy, to drive you up a wall, to psychically drive you to do something to yourself and do something to others. That's the goal. So let's listen to this really quick and break this down. And if you think the military is there to keep you safe and save lives, well, let's check out what this lady has to say.
Question about some of the technology that you're developing to fight the war on terror, specifically directed energy and high-powered microwave technology. When do you envision that you can weaponize that type of technology?
Goodness, it is in, for the most part, the kinds of things you're talking about are in varying early stages. Do you have anything you'd add?
I don't think I would add much.
Early stages means, well advanced and deployed. Okay. Early stages just means to you, and we're working on this, guys. We're working on changing our minds, renewing our minds, becoming equipped with the right information to understand what kind of warfare this is and what kind of tactics are being used. And this is just another Delphi technique tactic that they're using on the general population, and him pretending to be ignorant of these exotic weapon systems is a joke, but he's told not to talk about it. And this used to be the Department of Defense, the head of the Department of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, on the left here. But notice this commando that comes in and starts talking for him. Watch.
I think they are in early stages and probably not ready for employment at this point.
But you sound like you're willing to experiment with it.
I think that's the point, and I think, and we have, I think, from the beginning of this conflict, I think General Franks has been very open to looking at.
Did you hear the reporter say, "Oh, so you're willing to experiment?" And then this guy says, "Yes, yes," and just nods his head and agrees. Okay, so what do you think that means? It's deployed. It's being tested and used.
New things, if there are new things available, and has been willing to put.
He's lying to you when he says that if these things are available.
Them into the fight.
Once they get that bird, Colonel, they go through an initiation ceremony. This is not and my husband told me about that too.
What's the initiation ceremony like?
They get them drunk. Dining in, shellback. He told me.
This lady is saying that she had a husband who is a colonel in the military, like Colonel Wendell Limbach. He's a colonel. But in order to make it to be a colonel, listen to what this lady says. And this is the way the world really works, guys. I've been hunted like an animal and a dog for just mentioning it, talking about the Hollywood, talking about, the film industry that I've seen firsthand, talking about, the way this economy really works and the trafficking in the souls of men and in the bodies of men and women and children. and making a business out of people and their souls, literally. And that's what these demons do. But now we have this good, well-spoken lady talking about her husband and what her husband, who is in the military, said that you have to do to become a colonel. And many of us say, well, why would she lie? Why would this just be a false story? This lady doesn't look like she's there telling stories, okay? But here she goes, and let's hear what she has to say about what these good Marines, as they're in the service, as they become colonels, have to do in order to maintain that position in the military.
Oh, dining in. This is a term that they use.
Oh, yeah.
A code
yeah.
word.
Oh, yeah.
Shellback?
Shellback. They,
What's that mean?
anal sex. But they get them really drunk. The guys who are that way do it. It's a group situation thing. And I was told by two colonels who said, you know, it's normal, Kay. This is just what we do in battle, you know.
This is just good old boys?
This is just what we do, Kay.
They get drunk and
They get drunk and they ejaculate. They beat each other off. You know, it's awful.
Okay, you see what I'm saying, guys? So we can clearly see that sex and perversity is the name of the game. And, you know, this dear woman talked about her husband being friends with the colonel, and this colonel telling both of them, you know, that this type of behavior is normal actually in the military. And whatever your flavor is, it doesn't matter to me. That's not the point about this. This is about using sexual perversity and degradation and demonic possession as a way of, you know, making a super soldier basically. And you guys are, you know, all getting together and, you know, doing these satanic rituals to get good and demon possess. And, you know, there's all this sexual perversity going on within the military. And, you know, and it is common, the colonel said, it is normal. And this is what the colonel said. So let's go back and let's hear what she says.
Colonel, that bird, they go through an initiation ceremony. This is not
we all know that, guys. We all know that by now, that these people practice rituals to evoke, you know, dark entities that feed on pain, misery, sorrow, and harm, and they just love it. And these demons give these people power who participate in this kind of stuff. And it is temporary power. And usually we find out that they get the short end of the stick because they're working with the father of lies. And I don't know why anybody would believe the father of lies, but that's who you're, you know, partnering up with and who is promising you prestige and promotion and position and power. You got it? So that's the bottom line.
My husband told me about that too.
What's the initiation ceremony like?
They get them drunk.
Uh-huh.
Dining in, shellback. He told me.
Oh, dining in. This is a term that they use.
Oh, yeah.
A code word.
Oh, yeah.
Shellback?
Shellback. They,
Shellback, guys. Look it up. Maybe you can look up that term, shellback. That's what they call this activity of orgy, sex, homosexual sex, basically is what she's talking about, that, you know, most of the military participates in. And remember, it's not strange because I think that, you know, the colonels agree that in a time of war, sex is always used as a weapon, whether it's the honeypot and surveillance, or it is using sex to dominate and control and humiliate populations. That is what they use as a tactic of abuse and control, and they weaponize sex on every level. And then, you know, they use it to torment and abuse and, you know, emotionally destroy their target, you know, as these dudes just end up raping, you know, and in America, they do it by electromagnetic weapons. They just rape you and sexually stimulate you and do all these things to you while you're in your home and try to, you know, distract you all day long and torture you all day long with images and thoughts that are contrary to your nature. Okay, so, but listen to what this lady says and we'll move on.
What's that mean?
anal sex. But they get them really drunk. The guys who are that way do it. It's a group situation thing. And I was told by two colonels
And it's not just the guys that are that way. It is a system that has been in place, a satanic system of ritual sacrifice, so that, you know, they can put you in a position of power and have that dirt on you. It's a blackmail system where they have dirt on you and you step out of line and you start speaking the truth about what's really going on. And they just, you know, threaten to expose you, and usually do. That's why they blackmail you before, you know, you're put in a position of authority. And basically these liars just come out and say, well, look at how hard I've worked. And it's like, no, you're a made man. You're an appointed person, and you got no skill or ability or anything that qualifies you for this. But they just install the worst of the worst over us, guys.
Who said, you know, it's normal, Kay. This is just what we do in battle, you know.
For him to say that this is just what we do in battle, the colonel telling her this about this sexual deviance in the military that's happening behind closed doors and amongst military personnel, just rape and sexual escapades where there's big group orgies and all these things, you know, to be part of the brotherhood. That's basically what you got to understand. And it's going to keep going on. And the perversity is a part of warfare. It's about debasing all morals, because if you're not a moral person, then you're easily manageable. You're easily controlled by your addictions. You know what I mean? So they use sex as a weapon in warfare. Okay. And whether you take it from rape or all the way down to the other spectrum, where we're talking about energy weapons being used to torture and to harm and to broadcast images and impulses to the target. This happens with many of us all the day long. I mean, they go months and months and months of just hounding you with, you know, things that are contrary to your nature and who you really are, and you know it. And that's why you find yourself like maybe even embarrassed about some of the thoughts that come through your mind, because you're like, this is crazy, what's going on here? And you find out later that it was completely synthetic, and you knew it the whole time because of how intrusive and strange it feels. And it does feel synthetic. It feels like it's not coming from you. But meanwhile, these people that want to be part of the JIFCO and the Joint Intermediate Task Force are also given energy weapons and less than lethal means to bring the force to the American people. Oh, and by the way, this is what these guys are doing in private. So this is what people have to understand, that behind all of this is a sense of immorality and lawlessness that, like, you would never even believe it, even if you were shown video proof of it. That's how bad it is.
This is just good old boys.
This is just what we do, Kay.
They get drunk and
They get drunk and they ejaculate. They beat each other off. You know, it's awful.
Okay, so we've heard her say that several times. Let's look at this really quick, and I'm going to finish pretty soon.
Sexual violence is used as a weapon in war against both women and men.
Toshanguo anaanza kumtumikisha nyuma.
Uganda has the largest refugee population of any African nation. Among those refugees are survivors of sexual violence who fled brutal conflicts in neighboring countries. But speaking out can be dangerous. Under Uganda's Anti-Homosexuality Act, being accused of
And that's what we're saying in America. Speaking out, the fact that they're torturing us, sexually abusing us, targeting us, using energy weapons on us, they create the chilling effect so that people don't want to come forward.
Of same-sex acts can lead to prison or in some cases even the death penalty. So for the victims, reporting their assault can mean losing their family, their community, even their freedom.
Yeah, so if you report in this country that you were sexually assaulted, they come and take you away and punish you for being a victim of it. You see, that's a tyranny.
Host communities, they don't want to associate with us. They even fetching water using the same tap. Even approaching them, it is very difficult because they believe that we are homosexuals.
Ugandan law defines rape as a crime against women and girls. Male survivors are left without legal protection. But despite the stigma, the Refugee Law Project provides a space where survivors share their stories and speak openly about their trauma.
Okay, so guys, this goes on in third world countries, America's third world as well now. And it's not just third world countries, but where there's poverty, where there is demolition and collapse and control, they are always, introducing their solutions, which take you deeper under their control. And the solutions are always going to be, we're here to keep you safe and save lives. Let us have your autonomy, your material possessions, your home, your family, your friends, everything belongs to us. And that's the way they feel. They feel entitled to us, like we're objects to be dominated and controlled, just a number, in the system. But, we can see that sexual abuse is common. And I'd like to know more from everybody, if you guys have ever experienced those kind of attacks like I'm talking about in this video. But I just wanted to bring some attention to it and let you guys know that these things go on, and that they use electromagnetic weapons to invert reality and to sexually abuse and harass in that fashion. And it becomes a great humiliation for the victim of it. And they can do many things to the body, to the brain, that distract you completely and keep you just, fighting off whatever this is. That's what you find yourself doing until you recognize, like, you're being engaged, and this engagement is evil, and it's coming against your thought life and your emotions and your volition, and you're wrestling with this civil war within you. And you discover that that war, that engagement, was a synthetic thing that was being broadcast over you. And we start to realize that we are under attack. And those attacks come in the form of even other brainwave signatures and patterns from other people who have been copied and brain mapped in this digitized clone version of the person. And, I guess you could just buy into your clone that's digitized, and then, you get to sync yourself up with an EMF broadcast that gets to make that a reality. You know what I mean? By broadcasting electromagnetically to the brain and body, and animating, so to speak, with a falsified stream of energy. Okay, so that's what these systems can do in a lot of ways. And we have talked about it from every angle, and I'm going to keep talking about it. I just wanted to say, like, share, and subscribe, guys, and keep up the good work. And just remember, we're in this fight, and every day we keep falling forward, we keep moving forward, and we keep exposing what these people are up to and what they're doing. But I wanted to talk a little bit today about the psychology. I wanted to talk a little bit today about how they weaponize and use sexual violence against men and women and children as a warfare strategy and tactic, and how many of us as targeted individuals have been attacked sexually and even raped by electromagnetic energy weapons. So if that's happened to you, just comment and let me know, and we can have a discussion about it, guys, and figure out ways to protect ourselves against these identity shaping and changing attacks in Jesus' name. And I love you guys. God bless. One is going like grass with the massive pill.